Hi, this is Rick Yates, Technical Services Manager for GGS Pro in Griffin. This is part 4 in a series of controlling pests in retail greenhouses and the challenges that are associated with doing that. In part 4, we're going to be talking about spider mites, broad and cyclamen mites, and slugs. There may be times that we are going to have to make pesticide applications in our retail greenhouses. So let's think about the criteria that we're going to need. First of all, because of our long hours of operation, we're going to try to stick with products that have short reentry intervals. Also, pesticides that have a strong odor to them that persists. That's going to be a real problem. We're not going to be able to use products like that. There should be little or no visible residue left after the application. Again, your foggers really help with that. Bloom safety is going to be critical because most of the time we're selling open blooms, so products that burn open blooms are going to be really an issue for us. As much as we can, we want to emphasize biorational and reduced risk pesticides, also with an eye to pollinator safety, because in a lot of cases, what's sprayed tonight may be in someone's garden tomorrow. And if these products have edible crops on the label, that's a big plus because generally in a retail setting, we've got ornamentals and edible crops being grown side by side. A couple of quick disclaimers since we're going to be talking about various pesticide products here for a while. One is that it's the grower's obligation to read and follow all the label requirements. The pesticide label is the law. And I'm going to mention products I have a lot of confidence in, but there certainly could be other products that'll be safe and effective as well. This picture shows an extremely heavy infestation of spider mites. In fact, you can see the webbing, and amongst the webbing, a lot of those small dots that you see are the spider mites. In a case like this, as we like to say in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the cow's out of the barn. It's too late to treat these. You might cut them back and try to salvage them if you have enough crop time, but we need to identify and scout out those mites early and get our control done before it gets to this stage. This is a great example of a biocontrol that you can use in retail greenhouses. Phytocilius persimilis is a one-trick pony. All it goes after is spider mites. It'll eat all life stages of spider mites. And most biocontrols, we tell you, need to get there before there's much of a buildup of the population of pests. Persimilis can be used as a come from behind, as long as we use adequate numbers. And that's something we'd love to talk to you about if you're interested. Broad mites are extremely small, much smaller than spider mites. In fact, I mean, really, most people think you need 40x magnification. I know I need every bit of that to see them. Their damage, however, is not hard to see. They inject a toxin as they feed. Now, they'll always feed on the youngest, most tender growth in the plant, so they're around that growing tip, and they'll keep moving up as new leaves unfold. And you can see the oldest leaves look fairly normal, but you've got this artificially dark green, and that starts to get distorted. And as you get closer to the growing tip, and the most recently infected leaves are getting harder and more distorted. So by this time, this crop, it really is, it's too late to control it, but do be aware of the symptoms so you can help to catch it early. Broad mites and cyclone mites do have a lot of things in common, and the stunting and the ejecting the toxin on the growing tips being attacked, all these things are similar between those types of mites. They're found in protected places, which when we talk about spray applications, we need to talk about translaminar systemics because they get tucked down even between the petals in a Gerber daisy flower. I've seen broad mites, so we need something that will be translaminar, move through the layers of tissue to get into where those mites are. The symptoms can vary greatly depending on the species of plants. For example, Ipomoea, sweet potato vine, it almost looks like the plants have been frosted. It almost looks like frost damage on them. So just be keeping in mind the fact they're injecting toxins, and that explains the wide variety of symptoms that we see. Resistance to miticides is a real issue, and particularly if you're bringing up tropical plants from the southern part of the United States, most of the mites that come up with those plants are highly pesticide resistant, and that's a good time to be thinking about biocontrol such as the persimilis that we showed you a couple of slides ago. Sultan is one of the newer products that has some very good attributes to it. It's not a translaminar systemic, but it does have a nice long residual, and it works on all life stages. It only controls spider mites, so we need to use something different on broad mite and cyclone mite. It has excellent plant and bloom safety. We're not aware of any issues with it. It doesn't leave any odor behind as well. A recent label expansion allows it to be used on many vegetable transplants as well, and just a 12-hour REI. Cyanamide now has a new, well, more water-based formulation that's really had some advantages to it. It is a residual miticide for about 2 weeks of control. It's a nice rotation for the Sultan that we just mentioned. It also, in addition to controlling spider mites, will control broad mites as well. No plant bloom safety issues whatsoever, no odor, no residue. It does have a label that allows for use on greenhouse grown pepper and tomatoes. Transplant stage you might see in a retail greenhouse, and it has a 12-hour REI. We'd mentioned Pylon when we were talking about Western flower thrips. It also controls spider mites and broad mites, and being a strong translaminar product is a really good choice. Avid remains the treatment of choice for broad mites because of its strong translaminar activity. Generally, we make 2 applications 7 days apart. It does have kind of a sweet smell and odor to it that some people find objectionable. Do want to make you aware of that. Most spider mites now are resistant to Avid, but we still do use it for broad mites. Your horticultural oils, Suff Oil X and Ultra Pure Oil, they have just 4-hour REIs. They do leave some shiny residue behind, but a lot of growers find that to be desirable. They tend to burn open blooms, but they are quite successful against the highly resistant spider mites that are coming up from the southern part of the United States. So if you're bringing tropicals in, these two oils might be your best friend. They also control mealybugs, which sometimes come in with those tropicals as well. Slugs do their destructive activity at nighttime or possibly on rainy days, but then a typical spring retail greenhouse, it's very common to see slugs working, and they will feed on a wide variety of crops. Using baits are the best and the safest way to control slugs in the greenhouse. And there's one called Sluggo Plus that is safe for children and pets. If you allow pets in your greenhouse, you want to make sure that they won't be able to pick up those baits and become ill from it. So that's a really good choice. In addition to slugs, you'll see it controls ants and pill bugs, some other things that you might want to control there as well. Has just a 4-hour REI after that application is made. It persists for a week or two, and it's OMRI listed if you are seeking to be organic. Well, thank you very much for your virtual participation in this webinar. I wanted to point out, if you have any questions that you think of after the presentation is over, you can contact my teammates and myself at the email address below. Thanks again.